Hi, everyone. Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing here, and welcome to this week's author journey. Today is Tuesday, and every Tuesday at 4 p.m., we go live on OC Publishing Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and on my LinkedIn profile. So hopefully you're able to find us every week at 4 p.m. And today it gives me great pleasure to bring to you an author who has been a regular Paradise writer, one of my folks that comes every year to the Paradise Writers Retreat, and she has recently launched her memoir, and it is Behind the Dress, and it's a fascinating look. Do you understand to read a little bit on the back and look inside not only the family home, but also the mindset of a woman who was truly blinded by and absorbed into the trappings of what she would later realize was a cult. The author skillfully describes how she was lulled by the teachings of a life of piety and then total submission to male dominance, and how she succumbed completely. This riveting story of how she finally leaves a suffocating existence and her demanding husband to rebuild herself and a new life on the outside. So I have today with me Christine Faour, who was born in Corner Brook, Newfoundland during the baby boomer years. Some of us were. And she went to university in Nova Scotia and then taught school for several years before marrying and becoming a wife and mother in a homeschooling cult. She has come out a survivor and is now living in the Annapolis Valley of Nova Scotia with her husband, Dave. So please welcome me in joining Christine Faour to today's author journey. Hi, Christine.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you, Anne, for having me. This is great.
It's such a pleasure. And, as I was saying earlier, we first met, a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when you started to come to the Paradise Writers Retreat. And, every year we just develop a stronger professional and friendship relationship. And it's just, I can't believe that I've waited so long to bring you on. So welcome. I'm so excited to have you.
Yeah, the retreats have been amazing. And it's because of the retreats, actually, that my book finally came to being published. Because if it wasn't for the encouragement at the retreat, I don't think it ever would have happened.
Oh, that actually feeds very nicely into one of my, first questions is, how did this book come to be? And, what inspired you to write Behind the Dress? Just show everybody again. This is an actual picture of Christine while she was unknowingly in a cult. Talk a little bit about, just how this book came to be.
Well, I had been journaling for years, ever since my marriage ended in 2004. And I started journaling about my feelings and, like, how come I'm so different from everybody else, even though I wasn't homeschooling anymore. And then I kept telling people, like, I used to homeschool my kids, and I wore long dresses all the time. I was submitted to my husband. We even house churched. And everywhere I went talking about it, this was before I even knew that I had been in a cult. And, I found myself at a dinner one time, and, I was telling them about a special product I used to make. And so anyway, they just, oh God, just hang on. And so anyway, they said, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. Hey, listen to Christine's story. And, so I'd start telling people, and then, they'd say, oh, like, how did you live? And how did you dress? And, what was your day like? And all that type of thing. And so I started telling them, and people said, you should write a book. And I thought, what's the point in writing a book? Like, I mean, it's just me wailing and moaning about my past life, and then like, it got a lot stronger after that. And, I talked about it more and more. And then in 2014, I found out that this organization that I had been involved with was actually a cult, and its leader was being brought up on charges. Of course,
Wow.
like, so what else is new, right? And so then I started researching and reading this website that I had found. And I mean, it just went on and on about people's experiences in this cult, as we call
Hmm.
it now. And there was a Facebook page that helped parents. It was called the ATI Parent Recovery Group.
Hmm.
And it was there that I learned that, you know, like how we lived during those years was not normal.
Hmm.
And, you know, like we thought we were so holy. And, you know, there's even a chapter in the book called I'm Too Holy for My Church, you know, but,
Yeah.
you know, and so once I found that out, I I had to talk about it all the time. I realized I was in a cult, and that's why my thinking is
Hmm.
skewed. It's not the same as everybody else's. And
Hmm.
I had to sort of think, okay, well, is this true? Like, you know, I had a lot of self-limiting beliefs, and I had a lot of judgmental beliefs about
Hmm.
other people and that type of thing. And so I had to start um unraveling all of that.
Deprogramming almost.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
literally.
before you met your then husband, I mean, you're remarried now, but rewind back because you were living, a pretty happy life.
Yeah.
You were a teacher. So walk us through how that happened. Like, how did you go from being sort of a happy-go-lucky, fun-loving Newfoundlander, to this pious, homeschooling, home churching, um,
Dress
mom?
wearing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like I was raised in Newfoundland in Corner
Mm,
Brook. My family was Catholic, and you
mhm,
know we went to church and all that. And then, of course, when I went to university, I went to St. Francis Xavier in Antigonish, and you know another Catholic university.
I think
So
I
you know,
noticed the ring.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So there it is. Anyway, yeah, you know, like I was just like anybody else, and you know, like I had a nice life. I went teaching. I got my teaching degree there, and then I went out to Alberta, and I taught
Mhm,
out there for 8 years. And on a trip home to Newfoundland, I met my future husband on a plane on the way
mhm.
back. And so, anyway, you know, we were kind of impressed with each other, and he just had this penetrating look about him,
He
you know.
swept you off your feet
Oh, pretty much. And I mean, before, like, we
at
were sharing,
altitude.
yeah, yeah, we were sharing, like, we were sitting together on the way from Stephenville, Newfoundland to Montreal. Then I was to continue on to Calgary. And, you know, like, he wanted my address and all that. And, you know, we had talked about marriage and, you know, what do you want out of life and all that. And I said, I want, you know, the white picket fence and the house and the kids and, you know, I want to stay home and bake cookies, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, really. But anyway, you know, and he said, oh, yeah, you know, and he had just gone to this conference and it was so wonderful and everything. And, you know, he asked me, he says, are you a Christian? And I said, well, yeah, I guess so. You know, like I was a Catholic, you know, I
Mhm,
believed in Jesus and not Buddha, you know, that
mhm,
type of thing.
mhm,
And so then he started talking about, you know, being saved and, you know, witnessing and all these terms, you know, that I never really had heard before. But
mhm,
anyway, he took my address. And then before he left me in the airport in Montreal,
mm.
he kissed me. Oh my gosh, you know, and so
A
anyway, then
little
he started, you
forward.
know, wooing me literally, like sending me stuff and phoning and all this. And by and by, I ended up quitting my teaching job in the middle of school year in Alberta,
Mm,
and I moved to Toronto, where he was studying at the time at
mhm,
the chiropractic college there.
mhm,
And so anyway, here we are in Toronto, and you know, next thing you know, I moved to Three Rivers, where his was his hometown,
mhm.
and next thing we're married, and then we start
Wow.
going to these seminars. And you know, well, we got married, and I mean, in my book, I talk about how as we came back from our honeymoon that December or late November, um, we walked up to our fourth floor apartment. He put the suitcase on the floor and he said, "Now, you're my wife. Your body is not your own, and you have to submit." And like that was
Ugh.
the beginning of what? Like what
What happened
really does that
here?
mean?
Hmm.
And that was the very, very beginning. Like I had no idea what I was getting into. And I don't think he did either. But these kind of groups tend
Hmm.
to put men in a higher position. And I'd been single for long enough and I was really happy to be married. And I figured,
Mm.
you can just lead the way, whatever. But what a mistake. And
Wow.
so as we went to these seminars and everything, we went to the basic one, we were learned all these principles and everything. And
Hmm.
if you do this, this, and this, you'll have a successful life. And then they had another seminar and it was an advanced one.
Hmm.
And in that, we learned about um, financial freedom. Like we weren't allowed to borrow even for a house or a car. I mean, can
Mm.
you imagine? And we didn't. And we actually bought a house and we paid cash for it.
Wow.
I mean, it's amazing. But,
And
we,
you also were required to homeschool your children, right?
oh my goodness, yes, we
Because you
had a
did
big,
start having a family.
yeah, we
Hmm.
started having a family, and like at the end of the advanced seminar, the leader, Bill Gothard, he started talking about home education as opposed to homeschooling. Home education, you
Hmm.
teach the children everything, like how to change the oil in the car, how to tune the
Hmm.
piano, as well as the academics.
Hmm.
And like it really was a homeschooling program, but it got into all the facets of your lives. So even in the application form, we were told, like the women can't wear pants, they have to wear dresses, and they have to be well below the knee. And like because you're not supposed to wear men's clothes. I mean, there were no restrictions like that on the men. And I thought,
Mm.
well, what the hell? I'll get a new
Hmm.
wardrobe, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But, and I did. I actually
Uh-huh.
did. And I mean, I tell in the book about the night before we went to the first homeschooling conference in Knoxville, Tennessee. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm sitting there. I had my Sunday dress in the suitcase, and a few essentials. And other than that, I had nothing to put in there. So,
Because you just had pants.
that's right. Pants and shorts. And so,
Mhm.
anyway, like my husband had said, oh, well, like we'll go a few days early and we'll do some shopping and buy you all this stuff.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, I did kind of fit in after that
Mhm.
when we went to the seminar. But when we got back home, I can't say I fit in,
Mm.
like because nobody ever saw me in pants again, like for the next 15 years. And
Wow.
even riding a bike, I mean, you should have seen the bathing suit I wore. It
Right.
was a
Well,
three piece.
and talk about like when you talk about the homeschool curriculum, they dictated what you taught in the home as well, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely. I
what did the
mean,
curriculum look like?
well, when the program first started, the curriculum was like 5 or 6 sheets of paper and the Bible. And then it evolved and evolved. And so the curriculum, when we got into it, it was 40 some wisdom booklets, and each
Wow.
one dealt with one of the verses from the Sermon on the Mount in
Mm.
Matthew chapter 5, 5
Mhm.
to 7. And so you would do 8 of these wisdom booklets per year, so that at the end of like 8 years you would have done the whole shebang, and then you'd start over again. But in each wisdom booklet there was a math aspect of whatever the verse was, and there
Mhm.
was a legal aspect, and there was a word studying grammar aspect, and on and on and on. There was a history aspect, a medical aspect. For
So
example,
there could be a parallel with the actual school system. So your kids
yeah,
could conceivably have like completed each grade as they would have in the public schools. Like,
nah.
but was that the theory? So when
Well, not really. Like the theory was, like you lead your kids through all these wisdom booklets and they end up with a knowledge of things that most people don't have. And at the same time, they have math and not much literature, but
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
and then the thing was, after that, they would apprentice. They wouldn't go to university. They would apprentice for
Mm.
certain jobs. But the girls would stay home and they would be keepers at home until such time as they would marry. So
Mhm.
that was kind of the way it was. Like I taught my oldest son how to read from the Bible. And
Wow.
after that, it was from storybooks. And when they got in the higher grades, we used actual textbooks. But,
Okay.
I
So
I
how
was,
old were they when you left? And you took them with you, right? You had 4
yes,
boys and
three,
took
three
3,
boys.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm adding more. So how old were you? How old were they when you left? And were they still in school? Did they feel like they were at any kind of a disadvantage?
Well, my older two were finished homeschool high school. I
Mm.
had put them in Christian school to do their last grade so that they could
Okay.
get their diploma so they'd be eligible to go to university. So at the
Mhm.
time of the marriage breakup and getting out of all that, my oldest was in university. My second one was in Cégep because we were in
Mhm.
Quebec. And
Mhm.
my youngest was just starting grade 5.
Oh,
And
wow.
so he went into school for the first time in grade 5. It was
Wow.
very rough because in Quebec, it was, a lot of the courses were given in French and
Right.
he didn't speak French. So
Wow.
it was,
So
yeah,
your older son, who was then like you said, you sent them to into their last year of high school.
yeah.
Did they feel prepared to do that final year of high school after?
We needed tutors because there
Mhm.
were requirements for getting your diploma in
Mhm.
Quebec. Like, for instance, they had to have the history of Quebec and Canada. We
Right.
did it by distance learning.
Wow.
And then they had to have French. So we had to hire a tutor to come home to do the French. And
Mhm.
so the rest, like the math and all that, they were fine. They were well equipped.
Mhm.
Yes.
So you had left the ATI by that point, but still hadn't realized that it was a cult, right?
Right.
Right. So, I mean, what brought you to a point where all of a sudden you said, I'm not staying in this relationship anymore? So you didn't leave because you realized you were in a cult. That didn't, like, that realization didn't happen till many years later.
Well,
So what?
you mean leave my marriage?
Yeah. Yeah.
But see, I didn't leave. He did.
Oh, right. Right.
Yes.
How did I forget that little detail? That's right.
Yeah, I'd still be there. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm, right.
Yeah.
Um,
So, yeah.
Well, why don't you read a little section for us, to give us
Okay.
a taste for this? Because there's so much in this book, and as you've been sharing some of the details, um, a lot of it is in the book. So
Yeah.
why don't you
Yeah.
just give us a little taste?
Okay. Well, the chapter I'm going to read is called The Day I Forgot My Name. I glanced in the mirror one day, as I usually do when getting ready to go somewhere. Lingering, I began to study this person looking back at me, hazel eyes and serious expression. Who are you now? I asked. And as I stared some more, I started to reflect on what brought me to this place, on this street, in this town, in Nova Scotia. It was a long and difficult journey back to here and back to me. I remembered growing up in Newfoundland at a time when innocence reigned, and the only technology was a telephone and 2 channels on the TV that went off air at 9 p.m. Many years later, I went to university in Nova Scotia and fell in love with that place. However, job opportunities dictated that I moved to Alberta to teach in a little town called High Prairie. There, I developed my style, my moxie, and a devil may care attitude, which served me well right up until the time I left there to marry and live in Quebec. Suddenly, who I was not enough anymore. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had slowly been indoctrinated into what I found out many years later was a fundamentalist cult. It had crept up so slowly on me that I didn't realize it until I was trapped in a way of life that was distasteful to my family and former friends. You've been through a lot, I said to the reflection in the mirror, but you've come out stronger and with a wisdom and compassion you would never have acquired in another life. So that's what these wrinkles and gray hair are all about. This is one of the many stories about the first steps in my journey back to Nova Scotia and back to me. Going through a divorce, menopause, and empty nest syndrome all at the same time lent itself to some interesting life situations. For example, not long out of the free fall of divorce, I found myself yearning to meet new people, people who didn't know me in my former life and who would accept me just for me. I had a friend who invited me to go to a course with her. It was good for confidence building, she said. On a cold evening in February, I found my English self in a church basement in North Montreal at the Sylva Bergeron course. There were about 70 people, all smiling and speaking in French. They wanted to shake my hand. Human touch, I thought. That's good. I couldn't remember the last time someone touched me, other than my massage therapist. When we all sat down for the course to begin, we were told the rules. No sucking on water bottles throughout the evening. At the break, there would be water and coffee. If you didn't like that, too bad for you. The course would go on well past midnight. Be brave for driving home and stop worrying about foolish things. We were not ever to talk about what brought us there or our personal problems. With growing apprehension, I sat down and wondered what on earth this was all about. The next order of business was for us newbies to introduce ourselves. We were to stand, say our name in a voice that could be heard by all 70 people in the room, and then spell it. That doesn't sound like a difficult thing to do, but for someone who has stage fright, it was a mountain. Oh, and did I mention it was all in French? I could say my name with a French accent, but to spell it in French also, how hard could it be? As my turn approached, with heart pounding, I stood and started to say my name. I started, but then I got stuck. See, between Christine and Faour, there's another name, another life, my married surname, which I hadn't gotten rid of yet. I started with Christine. Did you ever hear of liminal space? It's when you have left the tried and true and you haven't yet replaced it with something new. Think of a trapeze artist going from the safety of one swing to the safety of the next swing. In between the swings is the terrifying, breath-holding, heart-stopping space of what if? And there I was. Am I Christine Mascotte or Christine Faour? The time it took to decide seemed like an eternity. The room was silent. My heart pounded. Everyone was waiting for me to remember my name. And then I said it. Christine Faour. Christine. Christine. Faour. Faour. The applause brought me back to reality. No one in the room knew what had just happened, but I did. In that instant of liminal space, I decided to take back my name and my life. I continued with the Sylva Bergeron course for 12 more sessions. Every week there were exercises to do in front of the group, and I did them all with gusto. The course gave me more confidence, and I met some wonderful people. But I'll never forget the day when I, just for a moment, didn't know my name.
Wow. Hang on. That's pretty telling, I mean, that whole trying to get back to you and who you were prior to 15 years being absorbed and oppressed, and hardly even leaving your apartment for that time.
By then it was a house, but
That's right.
we did everything in the house. We homeschooled, we house churched. My husband's office was in the basement of the house. And like we didn't need to go anywhere really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and one of my and I love the opening scene of the book, and I remember, at the retreat when you were reading stories and we were talking about powerful openings, and I don't know. Do you want to share that story of how
Well,
this?
sure. Like it was just like probably the weekend that I had asked my husband not to come back to the house because we're done. And anyway, I needed some money And so like at the turn of the century, it was Y2K, right?
Hmm.
Like our sister church in Vermont kept telling us, oh, there's all the computers are going to
The
fail.
world's going
You
to
won't.
end.
Oh, it was terrible. We
Yeah.
were going, there'd be no food, there'd be no water. And, like I thought, how could that be? Like apples will still grow on the trees and
Hmm.
it'll still rain and so anyway, they were stockpiling food and money and guns while they were in the States, right?
Right,
And
right.
and so we started stockpiling food and money. So we built, my husband, in the basement, there was a little closet where we used to keep the vacuum cleaner. And you'd open the door, and so there was a little carpet there, but if you lift up the carpet, it was just cement.
Hmm.
So he had somebody come, or I can't remember if he had somebody come or if he did it himself. But anyway, like they drilled out a big hole in the cement, and he bought this safe and he sunk it into the cement, and then he poured, like cement that he made into it. And then we started slowly putting money into the safe. And we kept doing it until we had $30,000. So when he left, I decided to take the money and take it to the bank and open a new bank account at a new bank just for me. But what I hadn't bargained for was that money had been sitting there already for 5 years, from 1999 to late 2004. And it was in all $20 bills. It was in plastic bags and in a Tupperware container and in the safe, under the carpet, in the floor, in the little closet. And so anyway, I put all this money in my purse and it stunk of mildew so bad. It was just awful. So as the book starts, I'm driving up to the bank and I've got this bulging purse at my side and I go into the bank, like looking around, like, oh my God, I hope nobody notices the smell. And just feeling like such a lost soul. And so, I tell the girl, at the Wicked, I said, I have a large amount of money to deposit. Could I see somebody privately? And so she brings me into this room and, with two other people there. And like, I start taking the money out. And I mean, like, the stench was,
And when you told that story to us, we're like, there's your opening,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's your opening. And then fast forward. So, I mean, I can't believe that we're almost out of time, but
I know.
um, I wanted to bring up, you also have a cookbook. And I know you were gonna read an excerpt in your book about one of the recipes in here called divorce fudge. But just tell us a little bit, just quickly,
Yeah.
how divorce fudge came about. So here is just quickly your cookbook, but it's being revised. But we don't have
Yes.
to talk about when that's coming out. But Christine is quite a cook. But talk about your divorce fudge before we wrap up.
All right. So, yeah, back in 2004, 2005, 2006, I was going through my divorce. My ex-husband, was relentless, like back and forth to the lawyers all the time, change this, change that. And my bills were going up and up and up. And I just thought, what am I going to do? Like, I was getting alimony and child support, but I had just bought a house. I
Hmm.
had no personal income. I'd been out of the workforce for 20 some years.
Hmm.
And, I thought, what am I going to do? Like the bills were just adding up. And I was talking to my girlfriend one day and, I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like she said, you've got a killer recipe for fudge. She says, why don't you sell it? And I said, I said, I can make fudge. But I said, I am not in the right space of mind to be able to sell the fudge and drum up, business. Well, she says,
Hmm.
I'll do that. So she took orders for me. One day it'd be 10 orders, another be 20
Wow.
orders, whatever. And I used to make it in these pans and,
Hmm.
do them up with a little decoration. And so I said to her, I said, you know what? I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to do anything. I'll bring you all the fudge the first week of December. And I said, you give it to the people, you collect the money and give it to me. And she said, yes, she would. And so then, like somebody at the school board office wanted some. And the next year they came back at me, we need fudge. And so, yeah, like it was just amazing. And so like I started making all this fudge. And again, I would bring it down to her place and she would, do the honors and then just give me the cash. And by I thought, yeah, this is I'm onto something good. And something I've been making. And then I decided to call it divorce fudge.
Divorce fudge.
The money that I made that first year paid the lawyer bills.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. And
That's
so I said, yeah, it is.
That's incredible. Fudge. That's really incredible. Yeah. I love that story. And before we go, we do have a couple of questions. Bruce is watching. Bruce Bishop. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Bruce.
And he says, have you had any feedback on your book from former cult members? And what do your children think of the book?
Well, for the first question, former cult members, I've had emails and messages from a few of them. And one was from a woman who was raised in ATI. And she bought my book right away. And she wrote me afterwards and she said, thank you so much for writing that book, because she said, I never understood why my parents made me do all the things they did. And she said, your book really helped me. So, and then there was another woman who was in our house church. She lives in the States now. And she wrote me and she said, that book sort of vindicated me. It validated me. I feel a lot better. And, I've heard from adults who were in it also, like the little Facebook page, the ATI Parent Recovery Group. I announced my book in there and several of the people in that bought it. And, they said some of them were afraid to read it. That's how triggering it was. Right. And my children, my 3 boys, my oldest found it very triggering. It took him over a month to read my book. My middle son thought it was hilarious. And my youngest, he just loved it. He was so proud of me.
No. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for your questions, Bruce. And James Simone has joined us and he says, thank you for sharing your story. I look forward to reading your book. Isn't that wonderful?
Oh, thank you.
Yay. Yeah. And I did pop up while you were chatting, your website address, and Christine blogs regularly and has also been a regular columnist on and off for the local paper, the Chronicle Herald. But you can see all of her blogs regularly at A Nourished Life. And also, if you wanted to follow Christine on social media, on Facebook, A Nourished Life.ca. And if you're an Instagrammer, it's at Christine Faour, Faour. So Christine, I can't believe we filled that time like nobody's business.
Yep. I never thought it would happen.
I know. Well, we'll have to get you back. Thank you so much for joining us on the author journey today and sharing quite a riveting story. And I highly recommend Behind the Dress if you haven't read it yet. And again, reach out to Christine on social media.
Or Amazon. It's available on Amazon.
It is available on Amazon. Amazon, all of the Amazons.ca, .com, .co.uk. And ask your local bookstore to order it in for you. They should have it on the shelves, but so far you're still plugging away, right?
Yep.
The bane of the self-published author.
Can't stop, won't stop.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. Thanks again for joining us, and do come back.
I would love to, Anne. Thank you so much. This has been really fun.
Oh, it is fun.
It was great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, and we'll get you back soon. And thank you all for joining me on today's author journey. Please have a wonderful week. Happy reading. And we'll see you again next week on the author journey. It's going to be a special one. So watch for promos on what we're doing next week. And there'll be all kinds of specials in celebration of the holidays. So take care, and we'll see you soon on